Hello friends, Hansen here. Welcome back to INT Media, a video games analysis YouTube channel. Boys, over the past few weeks, we've been inundated with an onslaught of fascinating video game news. Turns out that Baldur's Gate 3 is a smash hit CRPG. Sea of Stars is a banger, much akin to the old version of Japanese role-playing games. Armored Core 6 is awesome, challenging, and wonderful, a callback to the old mech games of yore. And Starfield is finally here and has been met with mixed reception, despite the obvious fact that it is taking over the planet as we know it. While this has been all well and fun and cemented a solid Q3 for 2023, the best year for video games yet, yes, you heard that right, there's one game that I've been keeping an eye on that has seemingly gotten by the goalie and been out of the conversation entirely. And this is Firewall Ultra, the highly anticipated virtual reality shooter exclusive to the PlayStation VR2 and the sequel to Firewall 0 Hour, which was arguably one of PlayStation VR's best and most played games. I've been keeping an eye on this game for a while, not just because I think it looks cool and you can block a flashbang by holding your arm up or something, but I also knew that this was an important game to the PlayStation VR community. While the PSVR1 had a relatively solid launch with games like Horizon Call of the Mountain, the port of Gran Turismo to VR capabilities, and the Resident Evil games being playable on the PSVR2, it nonetheless seems that the PSVR2 was in a lowly place and needed a little wind in its sails, and most of us were hoping that this would come from Firewall Ultra. And yet, even though I was looking forward to this game and excited to see the reception of Firewall Ultra, I totally forgot that this game launched on August 24th, and on top of this, I was shocked to learn that it's sitting at a lowly 64 on Metacritic, and that only 2 review codes were sent out to press. Website Push Square, the famous PlayStation news outlet, gave the game a 50 on Metacritic and claimed the following, quote, "There are certainly the bones of a good game in here, but with the streamlined gameplay experience and limited content roster, frankly, we just kept thinking about the better VR games we could be playing," end quote. Now fellas, for my assessment here, I don't really know if Firewall Ultra is a bad game. I haven't played it personally, but what I do know is that First Contact Entertainment, the developer of Firewall Ultra, they tend to support their games very well and have a really deep connection and a good pulse on their community, so it could seem that this game could be perpetually supported and brought back into a state of good standing with its audience. So I do hope that this game is supported, given that it is more of a multiplayer title, and I hope that this game finds an audience within the PlayStation VR2 community. But nonetheless, fellas, I come to you today with a more broad topic of conversation. I want to ask the question, is the PSVR2 dead? In a lot of ways, it's hard to answer this question. The PlayStation VR2 is an outstanding machine. It reviewed well, and it seems that the VR community was quite pleased with what it had to do from a technological standpoint. But nonetheless, it's been bogged down by its hefty price point. I have long been a critic of its price point. It is priced at $550 US, $50 more than the price of the PlayStation 5 itself. Many people have claimed that this is a valid price point for a VR headset of this kind of capability, and I get it. I do think it's a very impressive machine, but my long-standing point that I have argued is that you cannot price an accessory more than the price of the console that you need to use it and expect that accessory is going to be successful in such a competitive market as the video game industry. And it seems that Sony was really trying to posture the PlayStation VR2 into its new side hustle. Yet nonetheless, it didn't seem like it set this piece of hardware that is undeniably a good piece of hardware up for success. And this has long been my critique, and it's the same argument that you can make about the PlayStation Vita, which was undeniably a great handheld, but it was postured incorrectly. Sony crafted an excellent piece of hardware, but ultimately the market didn't want it because it wasn't postured correctly to them as a viable accessory within the PlayStation ecosystem. But nonetheless, Sony did the right thing by putting their best foot forward with a game like Horizon Call of the Mountain and putting some sort of first-party heft into the potential success of the PSVR2. And they followed this up by adding games such as the Gran Turismo port and the Resident Evil ports that are both allow these games to be played in VR, which is awesome. But fellas, with the release of Firewall Ultra and its arguably bad reception, I am worried about the future of this piece of hardware, and I undeniably see it on the same trajectory of that of the Vita, where it is a great piece of kit, it's a great piece of hardware, it's a very viable way in which you can play video games, much better than its competitors in a lot of ways, you could argue. But if it fails to find an audience within the PlayStation ecosystem, it's ultimately going to fail. And with the failure, it seems, on behalf of Firewall Ultra to meet critical reception, we'll see how it does from a sales and a commercial standpoint. I have to say that I'm worried that the PSVR2 might meet the same fate as the PlayStation Vita. And on top of this, it's very important to point out that we don't know how well the PlayStation VR2 is selling, but we can only assume that it is not selling well at all, given the fact that Sony and PlayStation have not announced sales numbers of this particular piece of hardware. Whenever, this is generally the rule for the video game industry. If you follow video games in the industry closely, you know this. But when a piece of hardware or a piece of software is doing well, typically the creator of that thing is going to announce how well it's selling in order to make themselves look good. If they don't say anything, that typically means that it's selling quite bad. So we don't know how well the PSVR2 is selling. We can only assume that it is not selling well. In fact, we can only assume that it's bombing, because we just don't know how many people have bought it, and quite frankly, who is actually playing it and who is using it. So fellas, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I can't tell the future. Who knows if there's some sort of banger heading towards PSVR2, or if there's some sort of overhaul with the price coming our way. But from where it stands right now, and with the reception to Firewall Ultra, we can only assume that the PSVR2 is on a similar trajectory as that of the PlayStation Vita. And that sucks, because this headset is clearly very capable, it is clearly very good, but it seems that it's struggling to find an audience. And quite frankly, if it doesn't find an audience, PlayStation and Sony are the only people that you can blame for that. You can't expect a piece of hardware that is priced more than the console and the core component of what you need to use that thing. You can't expect it to be successful when it is priced at a higher price point than the console itself. You just can't expect it to do well. So is the PSVR2 dead? Is it dying? Only time will tell. The signs obviously point to the answer probably being yes, but time will tell, and I hold out hope that this piece of hardware will continue to find an audience. Other than that, fellas, that is all I have for you today. I hope you all are enjoying the plethora of amazing games that we are receiving. We are in a season and in a time where video games are at an all-time high, and it's something to be celebrated. It kind of pisses me off to see so much annoying discourse and so much dissension over a game like Starfield and other titles. I think that we should all really just kind of shut up and enjoy gaming for what it is. It is one of the best hobbies that exists, and I am proud to be a part of not just those who play games, but the larger industry and conversation as a whole. Hope you enjoyed, boys. This is Hansen with INT Media, out.